Solo Leveling by Chu Gong. Chapter 54. Heading to America. President Go turned off the TV. It was already 9 o'clock, well past what constituted a late night at the office, but Jinchul still had something to discuss.
China is requesting information on Hunter Sung. Information? Do you mean his personal information? No, sir. Then? They want anything that's publicly available, such as his raid records or newspaper articles about him.
This made sense. China knew better than to expect to be privy to the personal information of another country's S-rank hunter, much less a hunter like Jin Woo. But why the sudden interest? The Hunters Association of Korea had already announced publicly that Jin Woo wasn't looking to entertain offers from other countries at this time.
The request didn't come from the Chinese government.
What?
It was an individual. Who?
The Hunters Association of Korea represented the country and worked exclusively with other such organizations, not random people. Jinchul should have rejected the request outright.
Jigang Liu, China's 7-star hunter, has taken an interest in Hunter Sung.
Jigang Liu. That was the last name President Go had expected to hear. China didn't follow the international standard when it came to ranking hunters. Instead, they used a star ranking system, and the higher the number of stars, the greater the hunter. 5 stars had been the highest rank one could achieve, until Jigang Liu came along. Naturally, as both a 7-star hunter and one of the renowned national-level hunters, he received preferential treatment like no other. But considering Jigang's great abilities, no one contested this. Hunter Sung caught Jigang's eye? How had that come to pass? Jinchul explained.
Jigang fought one of the giants, so he wanted to know more about the man who took care of the rest.
There it was. President Go nodded. Not too long ago, one of the giants had escaped from Japan and headed to China. It was reported that Jigang had taken care of it somewhere along the coast.
Is this the mighty recognizing the mighty?
President Go smiled mischievously. First, the Hunter Command Center has invited a Jin Guild to the International Guild Conference. Then, the great Jigang Liu asked about Jin Woo Sung. President Go was proud to have recognized Jin Woo's worth from the start. However, that's a separate matter. No need to flash the value of their gem to those lusting over it, right? It might get them on the bad side of a national-level hunter, but so what? They had Jin Woo on their side. President Go came to a decision and chortled.
Go ahead and turn him down.
The dungeons had changed. It was a realization Jin Woo had come to while clearing high-ranked dungeons in Japan the last few days. Alert, he scanned the interior of the latest. He could sense the presence of magic beasts, but he couldn't see them. He would have been very confused had his perception been low or his experience lacking. Maybe from above? Jin Woo stopped and looked up just in time to see a sticky liquid drip onto the ground ahead of him. The acid-like substance melted the ground and generated a thick smoke that stung his nostrils and reeked. Jin Woo wrinkled his nose. Realizing the hunter wouldn't come any closer, the huge blob stuck to the cave ceiling dropped down. Whomp! Whomp! The blob slowly formed into 12 humanoid figures. It was a unique-looking magic beast with a white mask where its face should have been and a body composed of slime. Jin Woo had never seen such a creature before. Jin Woo summoned an old friend, Night Killer. A dagger appeared in his hand. It used to be one of Jin Woo's preferred weapons along with Barca's dagger, but it had been collecting dust in his inventory ever since he acquired the Demon Monarch's daggers. He hadn't had an appropriate place to use it in forever. The familiar grip felt good in his hand, and he swiftly threw the dagger at one of the magic beasts. Dagger Barrage. SHHHHK. The blade whistled through the air until it pierced a magic beast square in the chest, and kept going until it stuck in the wall behind it. The black liquid that coated the dagger from passing through the magic beast started melting the metal. Tisa says. The now soft dagger lost its original shape and oozed down the wall. I knew it. Jinwoo had suspected that physical attacks would have no effect on these beasts. However, before he could mourn the loss of Night Killer, the magic beasts quickly jumped at him. Jinwoo repelled them with ruler's authority. Bam! An invisible hand sent his attackers flying. Pluk! Pluk! The magic beasts' bodies broke into several jiggly pieces, but the separated blobs slowly merged and reformed perfectly. Heh! Jinwoo barked out a laugh at the creature's ridiculous recovery time. He would have loved to experiment as to whether his shadow soldiers was better, but I need to be patient. Physical attacks, tangible or not, didn't work on them. Then what else could he try? He pondered a solution while casually avoiding the continuous attacks when Jinwoo noticed one of the creatures moving awkwardly. Huh? Jinwoo looked closely to see the magic beast's arm hadn't reformed. He also noted a crack in its mask, probably from when he'd used Ruler's hand. That's their weakness, isn't it? Jinwoo smiled. Once he figured out how to attack them, it would be easy going from there. SHHK. SHHK. Dodging the magic beast's merciless punches, he summoned his other friends. Demon Monarch's daggers. A blade appeared in each of his hands, and Jinwoo's eyes flashed. Crack! One of the beasts went limp as a dagger pierced its mask. Hump! That was only the beginning. Jinwoo danced through the group, breaking every single mask in the blink of an eye. Crick! Snap! And lastly, crack! The final mask cracked into two pieces, and the beast splashed to the ground, having turned back into liquid. Jinwoo returned the Demon Monarch's daggers to his inventory. What if he hadn't been the one raiding the dungeon? At least a few people would have been killed before anyone realized that normal attacks wouldn't work. Even more would have been sacrificed before they found out the weakness. Worst case scenario, everyone would have died before that, even if it was an elite strike squad. These magic beasts had been that strong, fast, and dangerous. The problem was that this wasn't the first time he'd noticed this. Yeah, the dungeons have definitely changed. The day Jinwoo killed the King of Giants, magic stones had vanished from dungeons all over the world. These minerals used to absorb much of the mana within dungeons, but with them gone, the magic beasts had it all to themselves. In an instant, dungeons became much more life-threatening than ever before. And these dangerous new beasts keep appearing. Jinwoo frowned. The average strike squad setting foot inside a high-ranked dungeon wouldn't be able to avoid a fatality. And the number of gate-related incidents were on the rise as well. He had ordered Baru to guard his home out of worry, since the ant could handle most dungeons by himself. On the other hand, it wasn't entirely a bad thing in Jinwoo's perspective that gates were spawning more often and that magic beasts were stronger now, since it allowed him to level up more easily. In this dungeon alone, Jinwoo could sense that there remained many more magic beasts emitting tons of mana. A smile crossed his face. Now that I know what I'm dealing with, let's get this party started. He was done warming up. It was the beginning of their end. Come on out! Vroom. His shadow's soldiers emerged behind him from his shadow. He had already informed them how to handle these opponents, so they were prepared. With Baru guarding Jinwoo's family, Igris was now the commander of the whole army. At his master's nod, the knight signaled to the army to advance. Stomp, 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 stomp. Their marching footsteps echoed loudly inside the cavernous dungeon. One by one, The best hunters in the world arrived in the U.S. for the International Guild Conference, the national-level hunters among them. However, Thomas Andre was concerned with only one person. Jin Woo-sung will arrive tomorrow. Thomas summoned Dong-soo to the president's office after verifying Jin Woo's schedule.
You wanted to see me, sir?
Dong-soo cautiously asked as he studied Thomas's expression. He'd been with the Scavenger Guild for a few years now, but he still found it difficult to talk to the guild master. Thomas was extremely powerful, had an unpredictable personality, and was very possessive. Despite being a fellow S-rank hunter, Dong-soo felt small in Thomas's presence.
Mr. Huang,
Thomas got straight to the point.
Do not lay a finger on Jin Woo-sung.
Dong-soo's eyes widened, unsure how Thomas knew. His eyes then shifted to Laura standing behind the guild master. She stared back at Dong-soo as if to indicate she had just been doing her job. TSK, Dong-soo clicked his tongue. Thomas continued,
I know what happened between your older brother and Hunter Sung. I understand that there were suspicious circumstances and that you want answers.
Dong-soo's older brother, Dong-suk, had gone into a dungeon with Jin Woo a while back. All 8 of Dong-suk's regular squad members had perished in that dungeon alongside him, while 2 of the survivors went on to form a guild together. No wonder he had questions for Jin Woo. Dong-soo's discontent showed on his face.
But
Thomas wagged a finger at him, and a corner of his lips curved up.
I don't remember saying you could speak, Mr. Huang.
Just listen. It was a clear warning. Thomas was one of only a handful of hunters who could threaten S-rank hunters like that. Understanding the power dynamic between his guild master and himself, Dong-soo kept his mouth shut. Thomas emphasized one more time.
Do not do anything to Jin Woo. Heck, why don't you take a vacation at the guild villa for the duration of the conference? Would you do that for me, Mr. Huang?
Dong-soo reluctantly nodded.
Sure. Good. You may leave now.
Dong-soo hastily left the president's office with a storm cloud over his head.
Do you think that will do, sir?
Laura asked, seemingly unconvinced. Thomas shook his head, disgruntled.
Not at all.
Thomas had seen the hostility on Dong-soo's face. He wasn't ready to let go of his brother's death.
Laura. Yes, sir. Keep a close eye on Mr. Huang until Jin Woo leaves the U.S. Will he be okay with that?
Dong-soo might have behaved in front of Thomas, but he had quite a temper. Thomas, however, didn't care about that. This wasn't a matter where he could try to accommodate Dong-soo's preferences. He agonized over it for a bit as he scratched his chin, then shrugged.
Well, better frustrated than dead. Why are there so many reporters here?
Germany's top hunter, Leonard Nehrmann, gasped at the sight as he exited the airport. As the guild master of Richter Guild, he attended the International Guild Conference yearly, but he had never seen this much press before. The vice guild master told him,
That popular Korean hunter is arriving in the U.S. today. Oh, got it.
Leonard understood immediately. Even though he was an S-rank hunter, it was difficult for him to resolve an S-rank dungeon break on his own, much less one with giants. No wonder the media was excited that a hunter who was about to set foot on U.S. soil for the first time. Leonard also found himself keen to learn more about Jin Woo. So he's coming, eh? At that moment, the passengers deplaning from Korea began pouring out of the airport. The vice guild master pointed at someone in the crowd.
Oh, there he is!
He, too, was an S-rank hunter. While not as strong as Leonard, his perception was good enough to be able to pick Jin Woo out of a large crowd. There was a twinkle in Leonard's eyes.
Shall we introduce ourselves? What? It's not a bad idea to get acquainted with the mighty hunter. That's true.
The Vice Guild Master agreed. One never knew when one might need the cooperation of another guild, so the purpose of the International Guild Conference was to gather the world's most powerful hunters in one place to allow them to network. Leonard was simply getting a head start on the festivities. He straightened his clothes and walked toward Jinwoo's group, but paused after a few steps. His face was growing as white as a sheet. The Vice Guild Master glanced over his shoulder.
Aren't you coming, sir?
Leonard looked at his colleague, aghast.
Don't you see them? Excuse me?
The Vice Guild Master couldn't, but Leonard, one of the top hunters in the world, saw them clear as day. He mumbled to himself in disbelief.
I thought he summoned his minions from a different dimension, but he actually carries them around with him like this? Pardon?
What was Leonard talking about? Confused by the reaction, the Vice Guild Master turned back in Jinwoo's direction, but he couldn't see hair nor hide of the minions.
There are minions here? Yes, tons of them.
Leonard concentrated on the army hiding in Jinwoo's shadow. 100, 200, 300. Could he even count them all? He swallowed hard and shuddered. You'd think he was here to declare war on the U.S. with that many of them. Had Leonard been hosting this conference, he never would have allowed a hunter to bring such things into the country. There could only be two explanations. Either the Hunter Command Center didn't have a clear idea of just how powerful the Korean hunter was, or they were confident that his power wouldn't be used against them. As Jinwoo approached, Leonard felt an increasing pressure that he'd only ever experienced in the presence of national-level hunters, such as Thomas Andre or Christopher Reed. Jinwoo eventually passed by him, but Leonard reflexively looked down. He didn't have the courage to make eye contact with Jinwoo, almost like his instincts refused to let him. Once Jinwoo's group was farther away, the confused Vice Guild Master probed Leonard about his strange behavior.
Are you feeling okay, sir? You don't look so good. Yeah, I'm fine.
Leonard dabbed at the sweat on his brow. Perception was everything, and being able to measure another's ability was an important tool for hunters. But just this once, Leonard was envious of the Vice Guild Master and the reporters for being oblivious to such terrifying power. Jinho saw Jinwoo tilt his head curiously and asked,
Did you see someone you know, boss? No. Some foreigner kept staring at me, so...
Jinho laughed it off.
You've been all over the news, so you've got more than a few fans. He probably just wanted your autograph, boss.
Though the foreigner seemed a bit too skilled a hunter to have been simply waiting for an autograph, Jinwoo broke into a grin. Besides Jinho, there were two other members of his entourage. The association had sit along director Jinchul Woo and a female interpreter.
Oh, over there. It's Jinwoo Sung.
The reporter spotted him. Koshak, 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 Koshak. As the area lit up with camera flashes, Jinchul fished a pair of sunglasses out from his inner pocket, put them on, and carefully scanned the area. Jinho noted how tense the older man seemed.
By the way, why did you come with us, Director Woo?
As someone who held a directorial position at the Seoul branch of the Hunters Association of Korea, Director Woo was the head of an entire department. Jinho was thankful to the association for assigning them an interpreter, but he had no idea why someone as important as Jinchul had come along. Director Woo glanced at Jinwoo and blushed.
I'm in charge of guarding Hunter Sung.
It took a lot of courage for him to admit that, but unfortunately, Jinho didn't hear him over the clamor of the airport. Jinho put a hand to his ear.
Sorry, what did you say? In charge, guarding. Who are you guarding?
Jinchul was now as red as a tomato, so Jinwoo put a hand on Jinho's shoulder to cut him off.
Boss?
Jinwoo pointed toward a familiar face with his chin.
Over there. I think they're here for us.
Near the exit stood a young man in a slick suit and nicely coiffed blonde hair, Adam White. He made a beeline for Jin Woo, accompanied by the same two bulky bodyguards. As soon as Jin Woo made eye contact with him, they both ducked their heads, flustered as they recalled their vain attempt to tackle Jin Woo on the plane, forgetting how much stronger the Korean was. They genuinely looked like they were 2 seconds away from asking for an autograph. He acknowledged the two guards and shook Adam's hand. Adam brightly greeted him.
I've been waiting for you, Hunter Sung. Didn't you tell me that you were in charge of Asia, Agent White? Uh-huh.
Adam scratched the back of his head.
I was until recently, when they put me in charge of assisting you, Hunter Sung.
They exchanged pleasantries, and then Adam led the group out of the airport.
I've arranged your transportation.
2 cars were idling. The 2 association employees piled into the second, while Jinho headed for the first, but Adam blocked his way. Upon seeing Jinwoo's and Jinho's confusion, Adam elaborated.
Everyone except Hunter Sung will be escorted to the hotel.
Adam then turned to Jin Woo.
Would you please come with us, Hunter Sung?
Did this have anything to do with Jinwoo's father? Jinwoo's expression shuddered, and the temperature around them suddenly dropped. Adam quickly waved his hand.
I promise this is for your benefit, Hunter Sung. You're aware of what the Hunter Command Center thinks of you, right?
Adam had previously mentioned that the Hunter Command Center wanted to maintain friendly relations with Jin Woo. They wanted to be helpful to him, and Jin Woo didn't sense any hostility in Adam's words. Had there been any ill will, he would have picked up on it with his highly sharpened perception stat, just as he'd done with the King of Giants' offer to become an ally.
What's this about that you can't discuss it here?
Jin Woo asked calmly. Adam smiled awkwardly and glanced at Jinho.
Some of the information is classified.
Jinho caught on and stepped back without a fuss.
I'll see you back at the hotel, boss. Okay.
Jin Woo watched Jinho get in the second car before following Adam into the first one, which sped away as soon as they closed the door. The 2 cars split off in different directions. Jin Woo had been patient enough.
So where are we going? The Hunter Command Center headquarters.
The Hunter Command Center? The International Guild Conference was to be held in a rented space near the hotel he would be staying at, so this wasn't conference-related business.
Can't you tell me what this is about now?
Adam pressed a button as if he had been waiting for this moment. A transparent partition rose between the front and back of the car, and a hologram of the English word soundproof blinked on the fiberglass. Adam wondered why Jin Woo didn't seem to care about the hologram.
This is the latest technology. Don't you find it impressive? I see something similar to it every day, so...
Adam seemed a little disappointed, but he quickly found his smile again.
Please excuse me for a second.
Knock, knock. He knocked on the partition to check the soundproofing before turning to Jin Woo.
To be frank, we're under a lot of pressure right now.
The tragic death of Christopher Reed, one of 2 American national-level hunters, was much more painful of a loss than Jin Woo could have imagined.
Hunter Reed was one of the pillars of America's fighting forces, and the Hunter Command Center is desperate to fill this vacuum of power. His death is currently confidential, so things are quiet right now, but we will soon do whatever it takes to recruit a hunter who can replace him. Am I a candidate?
Adam nodded. Jin Woo appreciated his honesty, but he was growing impatient with being pestered with the same offer he had already rejected.
Aren't we done talking about this? Yes, of course.
But Adam looked like he was just getting started. He pulled out his cell phone and showed Jin Woo several pictures.
There's a new offer on the table.
The photos depicted the hunt for the first and only dragon magic beast to ever appear, Kamish the Dragon. It had been the worst disaster in human history, and the raid people most wanted to forget. Only 5 participants of that particular raid had survived, and they were now known as national-level hunters. Adam stopped on an image of the world's best mage hunters extracting a rune stone from Kamish remains.
As you well know, the value of a rune stone is proportional to the strength of the magic beast it came from.
He swiped to bring up another picture. Kamish's priceless rune stone, containing the greatest skill to ever exist, rested inside a glass case protected by several layers of security.
We're looking for the new owner of this rune stone.
Adam didn't have magic power, skills, or spells, but even he felt excited just looking at the stone. What feelings, then, would it elicit in someone like Jin Woo? Adam peeked at the Korean to gauge his reaction. As expected, the man who hadn't been impressed by the Hunter Command Center's newest technology now looked very anxious. Adam was sure he had done it, and he gave himself a mental pat on the back. However, Jin Woo made an unexpected request.
Can you go back to the previous pictures? Pardon me? I want to see the ones before this.
Confused, Adam obliged.
Hold on.
Jin Woo stopped Adam on one particular image and pointed at something to the side.
Where is this?
He was pointing at a pillar that had caught his eye. Pillars had been erected around Kamish, which suggested that a building had been built to contain the corpse. Kamish had been killed 8 years ago. Magic beasts from high-ranked dungeons were worth their weight in gold, and its dead body would have ordinarily been cut up and used or sold off accordingly. So Jin Woo never would have expected Kamish's corpse to be intact. Countless nations, companies, and research labs would have lined up to buy the remains, but based on the photograph, Kamish's body looked untouched save wounds sustained from the fierce battle. Jin Woo's heart leaped at the possibility that Kamish's remains might be within reach.
Did the U.S. preserve Kamish's corpse? Why, yes, that's right.
Adam didn't know what to make of Jin Woo's reaction. He had been hyping up the rune stone every hunter in the world would kill to obtain. Yet Jin Woo was focused on the magic beast's cadaver. Jin Woo pointed at the picture once again.
Where is this? Let's go there. Pardon me? I've been humoring the Hunter Command Center all this time. You can grant me this one request, can't you?
Adam was caught completely off guard. But this situation wasn't unsalvageable, right? Between Jin Woo and the Hunter Command Center, whoever needed the other more would be at a disadvantage. So the Hunter Command Center's plan was to catch Jin Woo's attention. They'd first tried using Mrs. Sellner's ability, and when that failed, they tried dangling Kamish's rune stone in front of him. But the spark of interest had come from a surprising source. This cloud might have a silver lining for Adam after all. The higher-ups said by any means necessary, right? The director and assistant director had gathered the agents of the Hunter Command Center and instructed them to get on Hunter Jin Woo Sung's good side no matter what it took. They were to increase the chances of him defecting to the U.S. If the Hunter Command Center had it, they were willing to give it to Jin Woo. Adam reminded himself of his mission and cleared his throat.
I don't actually know where Kamish's remains are located, as I'm strictly on a need-to-know basis.
Jin Woo's face fell as he nodded. That made sense. Adam seemed too young to be privy to any and all classified information. Adam confidently continued.
However, I'm sure I can get the clearance if it's for you, Hunter Sung. I'll have to report the situation to my superior first. So would you mind waiting?
Jin Woo brightened at the news. The chances of shadow extraction failing increased the more time passed since death, and in Kamish's case, it had been 8 whole years. The odds were against Jin Woo, and it could turn out to be a waste of both his and others' time to even try. But if there was a 1 in a million chance he could succeed, then he had to try. And if he pulled it off, he would command the Shadow Soldier born of the most powerful magic beast ever known to mankind. He felt giddy just imagining it. If he failed, the only loss would be a minute out of people's days. Considering the possible gain, it was worth the effort. Of course, Jinwoo wasn't sure the US would allow it.
Aren't we heading to the Hunter Command Center now? That's right. Then I'll just wait there.
Oh, Adam wrinkled his brow, unsure whether he should be happy about Jinwoo's sudden extreme interest. The director of the Hunter Command Center of the US made a similar face when he heard the news, as did Assistant Director Connor standing next to him.
So Hunter Sung is here now?
Adam nodded.
What about the rune stone? He didn't say anything about it.
He'd made the decision to bequeath Kamish rune stone to Jinwoo to persuade the Korean hunter to join America. After all, American hunters growing more powerful meant that America was in turn more powerful. However,
no, sir. He barely said anything about the rune stone on the way here. That's not good.
The director rubbed his chin. Jinwoo reminded him of Thomas Andre. Both apex hunters were rather hard to predict. At this point, the director figured that when people reached the pinnacle as those two had, they simply thought differently than others.
So he really just wants to see the beast's remains? Yes, sir.
Adam nodded firmly. Overall, he couldn't complain about how things had turned out. Adam's original mission had been to bring Jinwoo to the bargaining table, and since Jinwoo had willingly come to the Hunter Command Center, Adam's mission could be considered complete. It was now up to management to negotiate. The director couldn't come to an easy decision.
I need to discuss this with Mr. Connor. If you would. Yes, sir.
Adam got up and left the director's office. The director was at a loss for what to do.
Why do you think Hunter Sung wants to see Kamish remains? I'm not sure, but he's definitely not here to play tourist. It's likely the beast's remains mean more to him than the rune stone.
Skills were invaluable. The greatest hunters were willing to spend a fortune on ones they needed, and for good reason. Skills meant power, and power meant survival. So how can seeing the beast's cadaver be more beneficial to him than gaining a new skill? The two arrived at the same conclusion.
It probably has something to do with Hunter Sung's ability,
Michael mused. The Hunter Command Center's ability to retrieve information on hunters was unparalleled, so naturally, they had gathered a substantial amount about Jinwoo. It was based on that intel that they deemed him worthy of offering Mrs. Sellner's ability and Kamish rune stone.
Isn't his ability restricted to magic beasts he personally defeats?
After Jinwoo defeated ant magic beasts, and shadow soldiers had appeared in his army. After he defeated giants, giant shadow soldiers had popped up. The more Jinwoo battled, the stronger he became, which was why the Hunter Command Center was desperate to make him a US hunter by any means necessary. But what if Jinwoo could turn a magic beast that had been killed by others a long time ago into a shadow soldier?
Oh my word!
The assistant director's eyes popped out of his head.
He wants to transform Kamish into one of his minions.
Michael's voice quivered. He couldn't believe Jinwoo would even consider making the worst disaster of human history into a minion. But it now made sense why Jinwoo wasn't concerned with the rune stone. The director shook his head urgently.
We cannot allow that to happen. No person should wield that much power. But if we reject him, it'll put a strain on our relationship.
That Jinwoo had come all the way to their headquarters to wait on an answer showed how eager he was. If one party refused the another's request due to a lack of trust, their relationship would break down. The director turned the matter over in his mind. If Jinwoo really could make Kamish into his minion and control it like they were speculating, no organization or country would be able to control him. Furthermore, his minions had the ability to quickly regenerate after being destroyed. The risk of Kamish attacking them once more, but with a similar unlimited regenerating ability, was too great for the sake of maintaining a good relationship with a hunter. The director wanted to know one thing before making his final decision.
We still have Thomas Andre, a national-level hunter, and almost 50 other S-rank hunters scouted from all over the world. Is Hunter Sung really worth pursuing further?
Actually, the assistant director hesitated to disclose unverified information, but ultimately decided to share the news.
There is a possibility that Hunter Sung may be a new national-level hunter.
What? The director abruptly leaped from his chair.
We received a report from Agent White a week ago that Hunter Sung could use telekinesis.
Apart from a healer, the national-level hunters had the ability to move objects at will, and though many powerful hunters had come before and after them throughout history, they were the only ones ever recorded as having that skill. As the only ones in the world to have made this connection, the Hunter Command Center considered telekinesis a prerequisite to being classified as a national-level hunter. If Jinwoo indeed had this ability, he might be God's gift to the U.S. after losing the mighty Christopher Reed. God bless us, everyone. This country was truly blessed. The director's expression changed.
Do you think we can trust him?
The evaluation of an individual ability was objective, but the evaluation of whether someone was trustworthy was not. The assistant director spoke of the Jinwoo he'd observed up until this point.
What do you suppose would happen to anyone who aimed their guns at Thomas Andre or Jigang Liu? It's terrifying to even think about it.
Both Thomas and Jigang were merciless. If one was lucky, they might lose an arm and not their lives.
Hunter Sung doesn't operate like that. You can still talk things out with him, even in urgent situations.
The director lowered his gaze and nodded. The assistant director continued.
And look at what he's done in Japan. No one else came forward to deal with the dungeon break there, but he took care of it without making any demands.
It was a sharp contrast to Yuri Orlov, who had asked for an insane 10 billion yen per day. The director didn't think on it much longer. He pressed his lips together and rose from his chair.
I'll take him myself. This may be a good opportunity to witness his abilities.
The assistant director brightened as he also stood.
By the way, sir, where exactly are Kamish remains?
The director smiled.
Haven't you ever wondered why this building has 20 underground levels?
Jinwoo was escorted onto the elevator by the director.
I would have rather talked to you someplace quiet, but I thought you would prefer to make haste.
Adam smoothly interpreted for him. Jinwoo nodded in agreement. The elevator carrying him, the director, the assistant director, and Adam quickly descended underground. I can't believe they built the headquarters of the Hunter Command Center on the spot where they killed Kamish. Only in America, he supposed. The director had explained that Kamish remains were entombed beneath the Hunter Command Center to commemorate the sacrifice of the hunters who had stopped the worst disaster in human history. Ding. The elevator door opened on the 24th underground floor. Staff members waiting by the elevator greeted the 4 passengers.
Sir! Sir!
The staffers appeared to be military personnel by the way they saluted the director. The director nodded at them as he led the group past.
Come this way.
Jinwoo swallowed hard. A tightly secured door opened, and cold air stung his cheeks. Wait, this isn't just cold air. Although weak, there was mana in the wind. It was obvious whose it was. Ba-dump, be-a-dump, be-a-dump. Jinwoo's heart raced, as his odds of shadow extraction seemed to increase. If Kamish's body still had magic power left even after having been dead for 8 years, how much power would his shadow soldier possess? He tried to calm his racing heart, as he followed closely behind the director.
Here we are.
His guide stopped in front of an incredibly huge, brightly lit lair. And there was the red dragon Kamish. It looked the same as it had since the national-level hunter stopped its final rampage. The dragon's imposing figure took Jinwoo's breath away.
All the electricity used in our building comes from Kamish's essence stone,
the director proudly explained. However, at this point, Jinwoo couldn't hear a thing. His eyes were fixed on the remains. The director noticed Jinwoo's sparkling gaze and realized it was time.
Hunter Sung, are you satisfied now? Please step back.
The staff began raising their concerns about Jinwoo's request.
Mr. Brannon, what in the world is he trying to do? Kamish remains are a national treasure.
But the director raised his voice.
He has my permission.
Their objections immediately died down. Jinwoo and the director had already discussed the process, and Jinwoo had promised nothing would happen to Kamish remains. Just like the assistant director, the director elected to trust Jinwoo.
Everyone, let's observe what happens.
They obediently retreated as per Jinwoo's instructions. Jinwoo then stretched his hand toward Kamish and whispered,
"Arise."
A notification arrived. Shadow extraction has failed. You have 2 attempts remaining. Jinwoo calmly prepared for the next attempt.
Arise.
His desire to take control of the most powerful magic beast echoed through the room. Arise. The lights on the ceiling flickered, and a chilling wind blew from nowhere. Ruer. It was impossible to tell where the dragon roar came from, but everyone slapped their hands over their ears. In this chaos, the only person who didn't lose their cool was Jinwoo. He spotted Kamish's shadow spreading across the floor. Did I do it? Jinwoo's eyes widened as something slowly rose from the shadow. Surrounded by black smoke, it was unquestionably shaped like a dragon.
Aeon! What? What is that?
The staff shuddered and retreated farther. Although the director and assistant director knew about Jinwoo's ability, the sight of it in action stole their breath away. Ruler. The dragon paused upon spotting the human at its feet. Shadow Monarch, King of the Dead, is it you who has summoned me?